Hey, it's James. I'm back with another video on eczema, and the new videos on this channel will be focused around healing the body, building the mind naturally. So what I want to focus on, it's going to be going deep into systems, how to heal the body, what's actually going on inside, but also I want to focus on some personal development things, a bit of spirituality as well, just because I have such a broad range of understanding. I love to share this information and dig down to the roots. So going forwards, that's what you can expect from this channel. So if that's what you're interested in, getting healthy, building your mind, moving your life in the right direction, then this is the place for you. And if you want to subscribe, that's up to you as well. So this video is going to be around eczema, psoriasis, topical steroid withdrawal. This is a systems analysis. So what is going on inside the body that's producing the symptoms? So the first thing you need to understand is the difference between how allopathic medicine and functional medicine / natural medicine sees this condition. So firstly, allopathic, that may be the first time that you've actually heard that word. Allopathic medicine focuses on the treatment and management of symptoms, not necessarily the root causes that are producing those symptoms. So in your mind, that's the first thing that I'd like you to differentiate. Just understand the difference. When you go and see your GP, your primary care physician, they're normally going to be trained in allopathic medicine. All right, so if you're interested in that, Google it. Notice that there is a difference between the type of medical care that you receive, the different thought processes that have formed these different medical ideologies. And right now, the current medical ruling philosophy is that allopathic medicine, the suppression and management of symptoms, is the best way to go. Now, it's down to you whether you arrive at the conclusion that actually it's because of some conspiracy or that it's just good business, which I think you'll find. That's the reason why they do it, not because they have bad intentions or anything, but the pharmaceutical companies manufacture these products because you are a recurring customer. And so if you don't know anything about business, it's just good business. All right, if I can just suppress the symptom rather than get to the root cause, then you'll keep coming back, and you'll notice that most of the medications kind of follow that. So without further ado, let's dive in. So eczema, if you don't know about me, my story, I got into natural medicine. Our daughter was ill with eczema, head to toe, very, very bad, removing full layers of skin every single night, scratching herself to ribbons. Very painful time for me and my family. And the dermatology team that we were seeing, they just kept giving us stronger and stronger steroids. I'd started to retrain by this point because I was reading a lot about the internal causes and the immune system and functional medicine, natural medicine. And I said, is there any chance that this could be an internal or a dietary or a microbiome derived problem? And she slams the folder down on the desk and she says, Mr. Rutch, this is absolutely just a skin problem. And so from that moment on, it kind of flipped a switch in me to go so deep into this, what's going on with our bodies, why are we getting sicker and sicker, why have autoimmune diseases gone through the roof? It's because of what I'm about to show you. All right, so that's my story, that's how I got into this, and now I am training all the time. I've got qualifications coming up, even further, working my doctorate. I'm a functional medicine certified health coach currently. I know a lot of people bash the word health coach, which is fine. Like, coach is a word that maybe you don't have some positive connotations with. It's probably because you've never had a really good coach. Like, I've had some good coaches and they have completely changed my life, my understanding, my performance, everything. So just go steady, make sure you're not labeling with any biases. Coaches, they can do the work if they've done the stuff. All right, so I'm working on qualifications. Herbalist, you can probably see the herbs up there. I'll be a qualified herbalist soon as well. So what I'm going to show you now, without further ado, is the breakdown of exactly what's going on inside the body when we are experiencing eczema, psoriasis, and TSW. Notice there are three different conditions here. So eczema, psoriasis, TSW, they all present on the skin, and so that's really the only commonality that they have on the surface level of things. All right, they do have different roots. So for example, eczema is a Th2 mediated condition. We'll get into what that means. But psoriasis is a different, mediated by different T cells. And then TSW is normally the fallout from use of these suppressive measures, these corticosteroids and things like that. Okay, so eczema, what do we know about it? So we know it's red, it's dry, and it's itchy. So they are the surface level symptoms that we're experiencing. Let's understand why. Why are they the things that we're experiencing? So firstly, why is it red? It's red because of increased blood circulation. That should be evident, right? But why? Why is there more blood floating to the surface? Well, those blood vessels have dilated to allow more blood flow closer, because the body has found a reason why it needs to increase that blood flow. Normally it's because it's being presented with a challenge, in which case it needs to increase the circulation not only of blood, but also of circulating Ig cells, so normally in this case IgE, or T cells, which are other actors of the immune system. James, what does it mean? Stop using long words. What I'm saying here is, it's red, it's dry, and it's itchy because of what's happening inside the body. So it's red because it's a Th2 mediated condition. That means that the body produces Th2 cells, it's one of the T helper cells. When it is, the body will produce Th2 cells when there's an issue around the cells, so extracellular. When it's presented with an allergen or a pathogen and it's floating around the cells or inside the bloodstream or inside the tissues, it will use a Th2 mediated response. This is different to a virus, for example, or a cancer, which is inside the cell. It will produce a Th1 response. So notice, eczema is a Th2 mediated condition. But also, it's a IgE mediated condition. The majority of people with eczema will have an IgE, which is an allergic response to something in their environment. Though not for everyone, the majority of people will have an IgE response. Why? Well, let's just look at one of the really common things that the body is reacting to on the skin. It's Staphylococcus aureus and malassezia. So these are the two really common things that over 50% of people, so the majority of people, are having an allergic response to on the skin. What does that mean? It means that IgE will also produce a cascade response, including mast cells, and the mast cells release the histamine, and that's where the itch comes from. Okay, so we're already started to explain why we're getting these other symptoms. Okay, so James, why can't we just get rid of the Staphylococcus and the malassezia off the skin? Well, you can. That's the interesting thing. And that's why they used to recommend, well, I think they still do, bleach baths and things like that. We don't really go for that kind of thing in natural medicine. But there are ways, and we'll cover those, to remove these things on the skin. You'll also notice why it presents, especially in children, in flexor surfaces. So inside the arms, backs of the knees, ankles, wrists, under the neck. These flexor surfaces normally have a higher concentration of Staphylococcus. Okay? Malassezia. What's malassezia? It's a yeast that naturally lives under the hairline, in the hair. But again, just like Staphylococcus, it's meant to be there. All right. So these aren't crazy outside invaders that have nothing to do with the body. They shouldn't be there at all. They are part of your natural skin microbiome. What's a natural skin microbiome? We are coated from head to toe, inside and out, by trillions of microbes. Okay. Lots of different types. Teeny tiny, slightly bigger ones, all in their own communities, and all pretty much self-maintaining. Okay, they look after themselves. The bacteria eat the yeasts. There are viruses there. There's the protozoa, things like that. So they're all working not together, but they keep themselves in balance. So if we have Staphylococcus inside the arm, why is the body now having an IgE response to them, which is an allergic response, whereas it should be having some sort of T regulatory cell, or so T regulatory means these are the ones who go around and calm the inflammation down. It should be having a much calmer response to these natural members of the community. So what do we know so far? It's dry. Let's have a look. Th2 mediated inflammation. Th2 cells produce inflammatory cytokines, which are just chemical messengers, interleukin 4, 5, and 13. Numbers, who cares? The point is, when they produce those, it suppresses the production of something called filaggrin, which is the master skin protein. Without sufficient amounts of filaggrin, we cannot manufacture something called natural moisturizing factor, which does exactly what it says on the tin. That's why in normal skin it is nice and nourished and healthy. It's because the body's producing enough of this natural moisturizing factor. Okay, so when we have a Th2 response, we suppress filaggrin, which means the skin starts to dry out and become leaky. And so this is where we get the cyclical effect. So we're having a Th2 response, and we'll talk about why the body is biased over to a Th2 in a moment. But we have drop in filaggrin, so this goes down, and then the skin layer, if you just imagine these as lots of skin cells, okay, the skin layer starts to break down and crack. So let's put some gaps over here. Now, whatever's on the skin, which can be pollen or dust mites, or pet dander, like pet hair and things like that. You've probably heard of these as some of the triggers. They're only a problem now because we have this breakdown of skin barrier function caused by an absence of filaggrin. Okay, so watch this. In goes the pet hair. In go the dust mites. Okay, in goes the pollen. That's why they're a problem. It's because they're making it through this physical barrier. The physical barrier is broken down first that is when these things become an issue. Okay, so by replacing the filigrin, we get this patched up skin, and so your physical barrier, which keeps these allergens and pathogens out of the body, can rebuild. So that's the name of the game. So we have to allow filigrin to come back. How do we do that? We remove all sources of Th2-mediated inflammation within the body. And that brings us over to this side of the board. Okay, so that is why, this section here, that's why it's red. We've spoken about that. We've spoken about why it's dry. It's because we don't have this natural moisturising factor because filigrin has been suppressed. It's itchy because of the cascade effect that's caused by the IgE to the mast cells, which produce the histamine. Okay, so that's why we have these symptoms. With TSW, just to touch on that, if you have been using suppressive medication will normally block part of this pathway or somewhere else in the immune system. If you're using things like dupilumab, Dupixent, it works slightly differently, but the end result is we're blocking the inflammatory process. Okay, with TSW, if you're withdrawing from that, the two things we know about TSW so far is number one, it's not recognised, which is a bit of a problem, although there are studies starting to come out. Some dermatologists do recognise it now, which is really good news. Some of the symptoms you'll notice are oozing. All right, when you come off the steroids, oozing, the skin will completely dry out and come off, even though your eczema was in patches. The body will shed the whole amount of the skin. Also shooting pains in the nervous system, so shooting pains in the legs, burning sensations, problems with regulating body temperature, your sleep goes to rubbish. So these are some additional symptoms that can come as a downstream effect of using these suppressive medications. Why? Because when you put corticosteroid or something that mimics the action of cortisol within the body, when you put it onto the skin, your adrenal glands, so on top of your kidneys you have two small glands, they will slow down their production of endogenous cortisol. So, of course, we produce our own cortisol, but our body's very smart. If it notices, we've actually got quite a lot of cortisol in the system now, because we're getting it from an external source, we need to slow down our own production. That's when it happens. That's when the problem happens, because people will use steroids a little bit, and then the patch will go away, and then they'll stop using the steroid. But now your adrenal glands, you have to come to life really fast and produce your own cortisol again. This is what could trip the body into that withdrawal state. So the two additional systems that are involved with TSW are your adrenal glands, so it's hormonal, and also the mitochondrial dysfunction. So the mitochondria, without diving into that in this video, mitochondrial dysfunction, that's another big root cause. So rebuilding mitochondrial function is one of the additional pathways that we use if somebody comes in with topical steroid withdrawal. Okay, over to this side, James, that's very fascinating, it's very interesting that you pulled all this information together. But what do we do about it? That's the main question. So to understand the causes of Th2 mediated inflammation, it's really important to understand what's going on underneath so that you'll listen and understand what's going on here and actually take some action. Okay? So when anyone says, hey, this is the root cause, this is the secret, this is the number one thing that causes eczema, you now know that that's BS, because we have all of these things that are driving Th2 mediated inflammation, which has this cascade effect leading to the symptoms. Diet, of course, cutting things out of the diet in the short term is a great way to stop symptoms, but it doesn't reverse the root cause. The two steps to getting rid of these conditions are, number one, remove these triggers in the short term. And for you, the triggers could just be pollen, it could just be dust mites, or it could be peanuts, wheat, dairy, shellfish, your mum's cat. You have your own unique set of triggers because of the breakdown in skin barrier function. You may have been exposed to different things. Okay, so yes, you can cut these things out, that's step one, but step two is then teaching your immune system, hey, this is not something that you need to be reacting to. This is something that you can tolerate, hence T-regulatory. When we talk about the immune system, we talk in terms of tolerance. So your immune system has lost tolerance for a food or a group of foods. Okay? Why does it lose tolerance? It loses tolerance because, hey, you guys are just rushing straight through this barrier. Stop. All right? It's not using, the body's not able to use the normal learning processes that it will go through, such as in the gut. And you'll notice it looks a lot like the skin barrier as well. If we go to the gut here. So on this side is your bloodstream, okay, off through the portal vein to the liver. And then in here, we have your microbiome, your gut, your food, and the stool, okay? This gut barrier is really, really, really important. If we have a breakdown of gut barrier function, also known as leaky gut, then particles from the gut are moving straight through into the bloodstream, unfiltered, unchecked. But in a healthy immune system, there must be some sort of learning process. The body has to learn about its environment. And so what it will do, it has sampling cells that have long arms, and they will reach through these gaps, they will pick up this protein, and they'll bring it back into the bloodstream side by those Peyer's patches, which are the parts of the immune system in the gut. They'll say, hey guys, what are we going to do about this? We need to study this shape and just learn, like, are we happy with this? We know what to do about it. Right, so there is a learning process, there's a sampling process in place. Okay, but when we have a breakdown of any of the body barriers, this sampling process is no longer being used, which is why the body will lose tolerance, T regulatory cell, it will skew over to Th2 mediated inflammation instead, hence the cascade that leads to eczema, and to be honest, a lot of other chronic and autoimmune inflammatory conditions. Okay, so that's what's happening inside. That's a little bit about the learning process. And so when your allergist or your dermatologist, if they say, oh, you can't cut these foods out because then you or your child won't build up a tolerance to them, they'll become really allergic to them, that's BS as well. Because if your child or you have leaky gut or an increased intestinal permeability, and you start giving yourself the food that you're allergic to, guess what? Humans, and this is the idiot check that you can use, humans have been around for a long, long time. And traditionally, we are nomadic, which means we won't move from one area to another. So can it be true that if you haven't eaten a food when you were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, then if you come across it in the future, you're going to have an allergic reaction to it? Well, that doesn't pass the sniff test, does it? That wouldn't make sense in evolutionary history. So always, I call it the anthropology idiot check. Like, how would that apply if we rewind the clock 2,000, 4,000, 5,000 years? Would that be true? 10,000 years ago. Okay? Body's been here for a long time. It's the environment has changed. Okay, onwards and upwards. Let's go and have a look over this side and have a look at the things that are driving this Th2 mediated inflammation. So, in no particular order, all right, we'll talk about ordering in a moment, but these are all the things that can be happening in your life, in your world, that trigger the immune system to have a Th2, what's called polarization, and move away from a T regulatory response. So the tolerance starts to go down, and we get this more inflammatory state. So we touched a little bit about the food, but here are the broad categories. These levers that we have that we can change to move it back towards this T regulatory cell. It is true that in some cases, using just one of these will reset the rest, and we'll come on to that. But in most cases, there are multiple root causes for this type of inflammation. So the first one, nervous system. What do we mean? So the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system splits into two parts. We have the fight or flight or rest and digest. Most of the time, we should be in rest and digest. If we come across a stressful situation, like a tiger, like that happens, or your boss comes and yells at you, okay, or a really stressful situation, then you should be able to move into the fight and flight mode, which is where the body deprioritizes all these long-term energy users, such as digestion, such as anything that's using the energy that we don't need right now. Okay, so immune system, digestive system, these are all long-term energy users. The body says, hey, slow down with that stuff. We need all energy to the heart, lungs, and muscle tissue. That's a problem, because if you stay in that fight and flight mode, now we have long-term suppression of the digestive tract. So your stomach acid production drops, your gut motility slows down, right? The peristalsis that moves the stool through your body, that all stops. Hence butterflies in your stomach. This is that shift into that fight or flight mode, which is why chronic stress is such a driver for chronic and autoimmune conditions, including eczema. So just do a quick check on yourself now. Is it true that when you get stressed, the condition gets worse? If so, part of your protocol may include this nervous system regulation. James, how do we do that? We stimulate the vagus nerve. We increase that vagal nerve tone, and that allows the body to hop between fight and flight and rest and digest much easier. Okay? So, nervous system. Also, a lot of people will notice when they do their timeline, if they're coming for an assessment or something like that, on their timeline they'll notice, I was doing fine until this really stressful event happened, like they got divorced or they lost somebody in the family, something triggered it, and now the body hasn't caught up to the fact that actually everything's fine, and it's stuck in that fight or flight mode. And that's where we can do therapeutic exercises, breathwork, meditation, yoga, connection with the divine. We're not going to go there right now, but nervous system. Next one, biomes and infection. We touched on the biomes a little bit, but the more data that comes out, it's very obvious now that we are more microbes than human. All right, there are 10 times the amount of microbial cells in the body than there are human cells. So I'll just give you an idea. Biomes, there's one in the gut, there's one in your stomach, there's one in your esophagus, there's some in your brain, there's microbes in your brain, who knew? There's some in your skin, they are everywhere, teeming with microbes. The body's not sterile. We've got these guys, we need to look after them, we need to feed them the right food, we should not poison them with antibiotics, which, I'm alluding to some of these causes, why it can start in the first place. Biomes and infection. So, an overgrowth of a pathogenic microbe would be classed as an infection. Okay, so a good example of this, H. pylori. All right, some doctors argue that it is a commensal microbe, aka it comes with a starter kit for the body. Others say it's something that shouldn't really be in the body, especially not large amounts. So an infection is a pathogenic microbe that's overgrown, but we can have, inside your gut, you have the gut microbes, such as Bifidobacterium, Lactobacillus. If they overgrow, they can be a real pain in the ass as well. So that's a different type of dysbiosis. Dysbiosis means an imbalance of a microbial community within the body. And there are different types of dysbiosis. There's insufficiency dysbiosis, which is where we have an absence of these commensal good microbes. Insufficiency dysbiosis can follow courses of antibiotics, cesarean section, things like that. We're not getting a full load of these microbes. And then we can have a overgrowth of those microbes as well. So there's different types. You can get a gut test to figure out which one, or you can pretty much treat it empirically as well. So if you're bloated, especially after carbohydrate meals, or you have excessive flatulence or stomach pain, we know that there's going to be a problem. And in restoring a microbiome, we don't use exact specific therapy, we need to use a more broad spectrum. So that's where we use broad spectrum microbial removing agents, normally the herbs, or we've got there wormwood, walnut leaves, so walnut, on the top there, I don't know if you can see the herbs. Walnut contains medicinal compounds in there to remove parasites. Wormwood, in there we have antimicrobials, antiparasitic as well. So there are natural ways to do that, but rebalancing, it's not an exact art. I can't say, you've got candida and I just want to get rid of that one. That doesn't happen. There is this false thing in medicine where we say, hey, if I make this molecule this shape, it's just going to do that one thing. That doesn't happen. That's where side effects come from. It's because that shape fits about 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 different receptor sites elsewhere in the body. All right, so restoring the biomes, removing infection, definitely. Restoring the biome, very important. The microbiome especially, because the microbiome doesn't just break down food for us. It also regulates our nervous system and our immune system. It produces neurotransmitters, so ADHD, ADD, global developmental disorder. All of these come from the microbiome because your default mode network, the primary neurotransmitter is serotonin, and serotonin, the majority of it, 80% of it, is manufactured by the microbes in the gut. So now you're starting to see this connection. It's not just eczema, there are other things that are off, the behaviour is off, the stress tolerance is off. It's because there are other things happening within the body. Onwards. So detox and toxins. I'm a big fan of removing toxins from the environment and then detoxing the body. You would be stunned at the amount of toxins the body accumulates, and then because it doesn't have the right diet, it doesn't have the right shaped molecules to pull those toxins back out of the body. Mold toxicity, heavy metal toxicity, nutritional deficit, I'll come on to those, but certainly for the toxic exposure, if the body doesn't have the right nutrients, you're going to stick around in the body. Pulling them out, so we say, I'm going to do a liver cleanse, I'm going to detox this, detox that. You've got to do this in order. All right, so sorting the microbiome out and healing that gut lining is your first step, because if you start to detox, remember the liver sits before the digestive tract. Right, so if we start pulling things out of the liver, it uses the digestive tract as a way to get rid of those toxins. Big problem if there are holes in this, because we'll get this reabsorption. All right, we can use binders, bentonite clay, activated charcoal. Those things can help, but really we want to heal and seal this gut lining first, rebalance the biome before we start that detox process, one step at a time. Okay, next, nutrients. An absence of nutrients, obviously, this is one of the massive root causes, but also presence of what are called anti-nutrients. Now, this is a bit of an interesting topic. A lot of the nutrition advice around anti-nutrients is that, hey, plants are really bad, like if you look at the carnivore team, all right? I did that for a while, I had a look at carnivore. You're starving the microbes, that's why you get the result. You get readily accessible nutrients, which is why you can exist on that diet, but you're essentially starving the microbes in the microbiome, so you are rebalancing them, so you're having a different effect, a positive effect. However, you're also missing out on a load of phytonutrients, which can modulate a lot of the other systems within the body. Right, so it does come with pros and cons. Some of the anti-nutrients that are more specific, so specific alkaloids in the nightshade family, they can be big, so nightshades, tomatoes, white potato, aubergine, bell pepper, goji berries, tobacco, ashwagandha. There's a group, you may not be sensitive to all of them, but certainly as part of cutting these foods out in the beginning, about 50% of people will have a sensitivity to the nightshade grouping. Okay, others, there's kind of a top 5 as well, about 75% of people will have an issue with them. Peanuts, we have dairy, soy, and there's a couple of others that I'll come to. Oats as well, oats is a big one. All right, remember, it's just grain, all right? No other animal eats grain in those amounts. All right, so you have to be really careful what you're actually eating. Anything with corn as well, corn starch, people are very, very sensitive, and that's from the clinic, we know that. All right, so that's not just hearsay. Okay, so spoken a bit about nutrients. Also, nutritionally modulated immune system responses, they require certain building blocks. Zinc, magnesium, fatty acids, okay, B complex. To function properly, you also need those building blocks. And so if the diet is deficient in those, problem. And then last but not least, or nearly the last, hormones. So ladies, if you notice just before your period or after your period, you get worse, you flare up, or you get better, yours could be hormonally mediated. Also, if when you went on the pill or when you came off the pill, the condition changed, again, hormonally mediated. Hormones sit kind of further down the list, so there are much more obvious things that work on first, such as gut function, rotating the diet, working on the nervous system, before we kind of come down to the hormones. And the reason why is because these are downstream. So as we fix the things upstream, a lot of these things downstream will start to improve as well. Finally, last but not least, energy. And that's not like, I feel great today, I've got loads of energy. That's much more mitochondrial production of ATP. ATP is the energy currency of the cell. If the mitochondria are not functioning properly because of damage or exhaustion, or they're not getting the right nutrients, we can have this mitochondrial exhaustion. So these are the things that we work on in functional medicine, in natural medicine, in herbalism. We just look at it in a slightly different way. And so collecting these different lenses through which to view the body is really, really important. If you just want to suppress this, okay, that's fine. The quality of your life will probably improve for the short term, but as soon as you stop using the suppressive agent, or your body's very smart, remember, it will continue to produce this type of inflammation, it will produce more of it. And so then we have to use a stronger steroid. And so we kind of go up the gears with that. The problem with that is you can only go so far with a suppressive agent. And remember, if you just suppress, the root causes of this burning inferno will continue. And the downstream effect of these is much more serious than just skin inflammation, even though that's bad enough. All right. So these are the root causes here. Psoriasis, again, driven by these primary root causes, they present slightly differently with the immune system side, but these are the things that we work through. So if this is useful to you, there's some links below where you can get some resources, or you can book in for a one-to-one with me, where we'll go through a full functional medicine timeline. So we'll look at what's happened, when it happened, current symptom sets, we'll look at the diet, we'll look at bowel movements, we'll look at lots and lots of things to see if we can prioritize which one of these we need to work on, and then set you off on a protocol to start improving these. So if that's useful, thank you for your time, and I'll see you on the next video.